Hello, my name is Abigail and welcome back to Polyglot Progress. It is that time once again. It is time to go over the last quarter and set some goals for the new quarter. I'm not going to give much more of an intro. This is going to be a long video as it is. So go grab a snack, go grab some tea, put this on in the background while you do dishes, whatever it is you got to do. And let's talk a little bit about quarter three and my goals for the rest of this year. That is very weird to say. So I messed up at the end of quarter two and thought that quarter two was over before it actually was. So my quarter three was technically more of a trimester. It was 4 months long instead of 3 months long. And overall, it was a really good quarter for me. Having 4 months definitely helped me accomplish a lot of my goals, but at the same time, I will say not all of the months were the same for me in terms of level of consistency and strength when it comes to my language learning. When June happened, I thought that it was my most productive in terms of language learning month so far this year. And then July happened and I had a shift in routine. I started a new job, didn't really get as much done, which is to be expected when you're dealing with those kind of big life changes. And then August came and I did way more when it comes to my language learning than I did in June. And then we followed that up with September, where I think maybe I did 4 or 5 hours worth of language learning the whole month. I try to study Bulgarian for an hour every day, and then I also count things like reading a novel or watching a movie or things like that in my target languages. So I would expect to see at least that hour every single day, hopefully more. So 30 plus hours would be pretty expected for me. I definitely don't end up studying every single day, but usually the days that I do more balance it out. And I definitely did not even hit 10 if I surpassed 4 or 5. So you can kind of get a sense of what September felt like based on that. I did do pretty well with reading and watching stuff. I read quite a bit in my target languages and in general. I watched some things, not as much. I definitely watched more in English. I've just mainly been watching stuff with other people. A lot of it has ended up just kind of naturally skewing towards English films and TV shows. I continued to do spectacularly with moving towards my year goal of 50 to 75 language lessons. I think going into quarter four, I was at around 58 lessons, I want to say. And now, because I am recording this in October, I technically have seen a little bit of quarter four, so I can spoil a little bit of it and say that I've been taking more lessons, so the number is already higher than that. Another overall year goal that I accomplished in August is that I did a challenge. I participated in the 40 hour 7 days language challenge, did not hit 40 hours, I hit 23-ish hours, I believe. I was absolutely not expecting to hit 40 hours because I have a 40-hour-a-week job and things to do outside of work as well. So to fit 40 hours worth of German on top of that definitely was a little unrealistic, and so I knew that going in, and my goal was just to act as though I wanted to hit 40 hours and see what I could do. Overall though, I really liked the challenge. I liked challenging myself to find new ways to learn and practice German, and I feel like it did wonders for my German. I feel like I had a lot of breakthroughs. I feel like my level improved a lot. I felt a lot more confident and comfortable using German, and overall I'm really just looking forward to the next time I can do something even similar to this, like a weekend long thing or something like that. It 100% will not be until 2022 that I am able to do another intensive time-based language challenge, but I really am looking forward to being able to do something like that again. And then my other sort of overall language goal for quarter three that I had was I wanted to start doing creative writing projects in all of my target languages, or in some of them at the very least. And that did not happen. Honestly, I have not written very much this year, just at all. Actually, that's a lie. I write as my job, and I guess Polyglot Progress scripts, but I guess I just haven't been working on my own creative fictional scripts or short stories or things like that. Maybe I'll end up getting to it in quarter four, but I don't know. Like I said, I haven't really been writing much outside of what I do for work and Polyglot Progress. So I think more so for the rest of this year, I need to be focusing on getting myself writing more. And then that means that next year, when hopefully I am in an established writing habit, I can just add in writing other things and writing those in my target languages. So talking about overall what I expect and what I want from quarter four, I did look back at my overall year goals. I was really hoping to just see how many of them I could really just knock out in quarter four, and I learned that I am done with a lot of my overall year goals, and a lot of the other ones are really close to being done, which is really exciting. Definitely there are some, like the creative writing thing and like other ones that I'll talk about, that have just really been kind of pushed aside altogether and I know are just not happening this year. I mean, heck, I thought I was going to start studying Japanese. It's just not happening this year unless it's a dabbling thing, but seriously studying it as I thought I was going to at the start of this year is just, it's not happening. And that's totally fine. It's been getting pushed off because I don't want to start doing it until I'm at a better level in Bulgarian, and I just move very slowly with Bulgarian, but it does mean that Japanese has been put on hold, and some of my other goals, I just have also similarly noticed that I have other priorities that take a much higher priority than them, and in order to accomplish those things, I need to not do some of the goals that I set out to do, which is all kind of just a long-winded way of saying that I think by the time this year ends, I'm going to have been able to accomplish pretty much everything that I wanted to, with the exception of things that I decided mid-year weren't actually things that I wanted to be focusing on. Q4 is a very, very busy time for me, so while I do have confidence that I can finish up some of those year goals, I also don't have a lot of confidence that I will have a ton of time or energy to dedicate to language learning. Honestly, my goal for Q4 is sort of just to treat it like a dabbling quarter. And I'm not saying that I want to just put down all of my serious projects and just dabble for the quarter, but more so I want to treat my serious projects more like they are dabbling projects. I could really see myself getting burnt out this quarter if I did try to intensively study the languages that I have been studying pretty consistently and at times intensively throughout this year. And honestly, if this year were to end right now, I would be pretty content with all the things that I've already done. I mainly just want to prioritize having fun, doing things in the languages that I want to when I want to. If I end up finding myself in that routine naturally, great. If I just want to kind of do whatever, also fine. My overall goals for this quarter, though, are to read and watch more things in my target languages. I'm not setting a number for that, just whatever I end up doing, but hopefully I do something. On a similar note, I want to finish at least most of the books in my currently reading section on Goodreads. I have so many books in my currently reading section on Goodreads, and part of that is because I like to have books in my target languages, so that way when I want to practice reading, I can. But there are things that I haven't touched in quite a while just because I haven't been in the mood, or I haven't been prioritizing that language or whatever. So I really need to just push myself to finish some of the books that I'm currently reading in my target languages. And then my last overall goal that I had set for Q4 was that I wanted to dabble. I just haven't dabbled at all this year, even though there were 3 languages that I said that I potentially wanted to dabble in. I don't know if it's really gonna happen. I haven't dabbled at all this year because whenever I have motivation to do language stuff, it's just kind of ended up getting directed towards my more serious projects, and I could see that continuing to happen this quarter. I'm just gonna be more lenient with myself, I guess, and really let myself lean into whatever it is I feel like doing. So maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, who knows. Moving on to individual languages, I'm sorry if it seems like I am rushing through these, but I am gonna try to do this quickly. Starting with Bulgarian, my main goal for Q3 was to be able to understand 90% of a Peppa Pig episode and feel comfortable sitting down and making a video on a specific topic. Technically, the word that I used was I wanted to be able to grasp 90% of a Peppa Pig episode, and if we're gonna go off of that, then yes, I can grasp 90% of a Peppa Pig episode, but I don't know 90% of the vocabulary or anything like that. I would say that currently I understand or recognize the vocabulary of about 70% of the episode maybe, and then I can figure out through context enough of the rest to be able to follow 90% of the episode and understand exactly what is happening, whether it's because I know exactly what they're saying or I can understand the context via visuals and the words that I do know to understand what the conversation is about. And I do not feel like I could currently sit down and film a video on a subject. Honestly, overall in Bulgarian, vocabulary is my biggest weakness at the moment, which is okay, actually. I feel like my grammar has improved a lot this past quarter and just this past year in general. And that was honestly a lot of what was holding me back in Bulgarian before, was that I couldn't grasp the grammar enough to even really be able to pick up and use words in any sort of meaningful way. So I am really happy about the progress I made with my grammar, but I am definitely also going to be prioritizing vocabulary for the rest of this year. In Q3, I finally finally finished colloquial Bulgarian, and I also finished the A1 textbook that I mentioned in the quarter 2, quarter 3 video. I'm about halfway through the A2 book as well. I am in 4th grade, according to the books that I'm using with my tutor. I have continued my weekly lessons the way that I wanted to. I have been writing entries in my journal. I have been using cursive when I write entries in my journal. I don't know if we could say that I accomplished the goal of improving my cursive. I've been working on it, yeah, but like it still takes me a lot longer to write in cursive than it does in print, and it looks ugly in my opinion. I did watch a bit of Bulgarian YouTube, so that goal was accomplished. Did not watch a Bulgarian movie. Maybe I'll do that in quarter 4. I do appreciate everyone who gave me suggestions of places I can look though, so I definitely will be using those whenever I do end up watching one. One thing that wasn't a goal of mine though that I did do in quarter 3 and I feel like is worth including because it's been one of my biggest accomplishments with Bulgarian is that I read my first native piece of content. I read a kids news article and it took me like 3 weeks and I translated it line by line and I looked up probably 50% of the words, but I am honestly so proud. It has felt to me for so long like I would never get to the point where I could read anything outside of a textbook. So I've been really excited about that, and I'm excited to continue to read even very basic things in Bulgarian the rest of this year and as I continue with my Bulgarian studies. Moving on to quarter 4, my overall goal for Bulgarian is really just to wrap up a lot of my overall year goals when it comes to resources for Bulgarian. A lot of my Bulgarian goals were tied to finishing certain textbooks or things like that, and I feel like a lot of those are really just accomplishable at this point, so I do want to try and get as many of those completed as possible. And then through that and through other things, I really just want to work on expanding my vocabulary. So I would like to continue taking weekly lessons. It should be pretty easy. I already have them scheduled out for most of the rest of this year. I'd like to finish the A2 textbook that I'm working on. That one also should be super doable. A lot of the vocabulary and grammar in that book is things that I've already covered with my tutor, so it'll be reviewing those things. I would like to read another article. I am gonna keep this goal to 1 because I do know that it took me a really long time to get through the last one. But my hope is that maybe reading this next one, I'll find that I don't need to look as many words up, or maybe I will at least recognize some words from the last article again in this one. And regardless, it will be good reading practice and good vocabulary practice and all of those things. Because vocabulary and output are something that I really struggle with, I want to try to write 5 journal entries based on certain prompts. They're going to be really easy prompts that I give myself, but I just want to push myself to be able to output in Bulgarian based on a certain subject, and I'll look up whatever vocabulary I need to do that, but I really want to see myself doing that by the end of this year. I would like to finish intensive Bulgarian. I feel like I'm about a quarter of the way through the book right now. And then the only other thing that I won't have accomplished for my overall year goals this year in Bulgarian is finishing Bulgarian Pod 101. I really found that it just wasn't the most helpful resource to be using at the time, and I still don't know if it really is the most helpful thing to be using, but I want to at least pop back in, see if after some time away using other resources, meeting with my tutor, maybe it's a little bit helpful again. And I would at some point just like to finish it. I'd like to get through all the material. It's just whether or not I'm going to do that this year or not that I will try to figure out this quarter. Moving on to Spanish, as a reminder, my overall year goal was to feel like I could speak well and confidently in Spanish. For most of the quarter, I did really well with keeping up with every other week lessons in Spanish that I feel like have really been helping, but I did fall off of that at the end of the quarter. It's something that I'm really hoping to pick back up this quarter, and I've already scheduled those out again through the rest of this year, so hopefully that will continue to go well. I really did not pull through with my goal of wanting to watch 6 movies or more and watching TV in Spanish. Just absolutely did not happen. I do really need to work on my Spanish listening comprehension though, so in quarter 4 that is definitely going to be an aspect of Spanish that I'm prioritizing. And I also really barely worked on any of the newly added Duolingo levels in Spanish. It's just so low of a priority for me, so it just didn't end up happening at all, and I'm totally fine with that. And I also totally slacked on reading in Spanish. I'd say that Spanish was my kind of slacking language this quarter. The first half half of this year, Spanish was a huge priority for me, and I'd say even the first half of quarter 3, it was a pretty big priority. Just as the quarter went on, I kind of shifted to my secondary priority after Bulgarian being German instead of Spanish. So just kind of naturally, I didn't do as many of those things, but I am hoping to do a little bit more Spanish this upcoming quarter. So I would like to review tenses and moods in Spanish. I don't really know what the deal is. I always struggle with grammar in languages, but I just, for some reason, have gotten really sloppy, I guess, with my Spanish grammar, and things that I never used to make mistakes with, now I make all the time. Speaking of reviewing, I would like to distill my last Spanish notebook for vocabulary that I still don't know. I do this every time I finish a notebook and move into a new one. I basically go through, and any vocabulary that I still feel like I don't know, I move into the new notebook. It just gives me another chance to go through and learn it, and also gives me a list of things that I need to continue to work on. Plus, it allows me to see how much of what was in my last notebook actually stuck. So then I can adjust the ways that I'm learning and hopefully improve the next time around. And I did just fill up a Spanish notebook. So in my new notebook, I want to write down any words that I still don't know, maybe make some sample sentences, just review all of that vocabulary. And then my only other 2 goals are I would like to do something like maybe planning a trip in Spanish, or some sort of activity that is fun, it's relaxing, but allows me to get to use Spanish in a output related context. And I would really like to watch things. As many movies, as much TV as I can in Spanish, that would be great. My overall goal for quarter 3 for German was to work on filling in the gaps, and I definitely feel like I did that. I worked on filling in a lot of vocabulary gaps that I had, and I now have a nice cohesive list that I'm also working through of things that I don't feel like I could comfortably talk about. So I think that in quarter 4, I can definitely really continue building on that and really get myself to a point where I feel comfortable in most situations. Another huge accomplishment for me is that I finally finished the first Percy Jackson book. That was another thing that felt like I just never was going to be able to do that. But I did. I finished it. It's like a 450-page book, and I read it entirely in German, and I understood what was happening, and it just felt like such a cool thing. It was one of those times where I just took a step back and was like, I didn't know a single word in this language not too long ago, and I just read a thick book and I knew what was happening, and I can just read and I can picture the story happening in a language that I didn't know anything of not too long ago. And it's just really exciting. I feel like I don't always have those moments, even when I should. Even when I do watch a movie and I understand what's happening, it doesn't always click in my brain that that's something really new for my brain to be doing. So I'm really excited about that. As I said, I also did the 40 hours, 7 days language challenge in German, which went really well, and I'm feeling really good about that and about all of the progress that I made during it. I also was pretty consistent with German lessons. Again, I fell off a bit at the end of the quarter, really fell off with all of my language lessons in September. Last quarter, I wanted to work through the Teach Yourself Further German book, which I did not do, but I did start working through the Aspekte Neu B2 book. I was about to say Bates 5, but I started that. I really like it. I'm definitely going to continue using it. I also had said that I wanted to read articles and write essays based on them, which didn't really happen. I did write quite a few responses in German, but I just didn't really read any articles, which has been a consistent theme this whole year. So I definitely think that I have learned that that is not going to be a goal that I carry over into next year. It just feels like I don't stick to that. And while I did watch some stuff, I did not continue watching Dark. I've been watching with my partner, and he just hasn't really been that into it. So when we sit down to watch something, it just hasn't really ended up being Dark. I think I'm gonna end up continuing it on my own, so I will probably make a little bit more progress through it this next quarter. All right, ignoring the change in lighting because I had to charge my camera battery and moving into my goals for quarter 4. Keeping on track with wanting to finish up the things that I'm currently reading, I want to finish the second Percy Jackson book, and this one is a little bit more of a reach, but I would like to try to finish the other book that I'm currently reading in German, which is called Love with Pride. It's a romance novel. As I said in my summer language activities video, I wanted to read like a fluffy romance novel at some point this summer. So I started this one, and it's nice to balance out the fantasy elements of Percy Jackson with just a contemporary book. I'd like to reach the halfway point in the B2 Aspect Noi book, both in the textbook and in the exercise book. I have been doing all of the exercises. And then if I feel up for it, I would really like to actually read some articles and write some essays. But because I am trying to have a pretty lenient quarter, if I really don't feel like it, I can skip this one, but I would like to do it. Moving on to American Sign Language. I finished ASL 102 last quarter, which means that I have completed my goal for the year of taking ASL 101 and 102 with Queer ASL. However, that is pretty much all I did, so all my other goals of wanting to work through some life print and wanting to learn more signs and things like that just did not happen. Some of this was intentional. I had other things that I needed to prioritize, and I was able to kind of put this one down for a little bit, so I prioritized where I needed to in my life, and that's what happened. But then at the same time, a lot of it was just that I dropped the ball. I really found that once I didn't have a structured class where I had things that I needed to learn and dates I needed to learn by, I just didn't really pull through with learning things on my own. My quarter 4 goals, I've kind of taken that into account and made these a little bit more structured, even though I'm not really trying to have a super structured quarter 4 and I do want it to be really lenient. I've just found that that little bit of structure really makes a difference for me for American Sign Language, so I'm going to keep that going. So I would like to review all of the material from ASL 101 and 102. It has been a while, and I want to just make sure that I haven't gotten rusty with any of the things that I learned. I also would like to aim to learn 10 new signs each week. That's a little over a sign a day. I could start the week with 10 signs and just continue to practice them every day. I was definitely given more than 10 signs per week when I was in the classes, and I felt comfortable using all of them. I just want to push myself to really be expanding the amount of things that I can sign about and that I can understand and all of that. In terms of where that vocabulary is going to come from, I would like to make a topic list and work through that. So it's not just like 10 new signs and they range from book and pasta and cat and like all these random words. I want it to be more like I decide that this week I'm going to learn about weather, and so one day I learn the sign for weather and the next day I learn the sign for raining and like those kinds of things. And then lastly, I have pretty much met all of my goals for the year for ASL. I really came into this year with pretty light, pretty manageable goals. Again, because I knew I was going to be focusing on Bulgarian. So basically, I wanted to finish ASL 101 and 102, which I've done. I wanted to be able to introduce myself and have a short conversation, which I can do. And I wanted to be able to sign about work stuff. But at the start of this year, I was working a totally different job. So I, once again, would like to learn some signs related to what I do for work. And I think this is actually really good for me to do outside of the classes, because I think it'll be nice to be able to learn things related to day-to-day activities I do, or just things that are very specific to my job and the industry that I work in that I wouldn't be able to get in a class where everyone needs to be able to continue to learn and we can't pause for everyone to learn vocabulary about my job. French was definitely something that was lacking in my life coming into quarter 3, and I definitely feel like I've fixed that quite a bit. I read quite a bit, both in terms of books, and also in August I was visiting family and my sister and I played like 15 hours of The Sims 4, and all of that was in French because that's just what I happen to have my game set in. And then I also got into a consistent routine of watching an episode of a French reality TV show with my friend, and we're actually going to start speaking in French a little bit before we watch each week, so soon I will have that little extra bit of speaking practice. But even back in quarter 3, it was a good way to just keep me listening to French and using French each week. In terms of quarter 4, I want to keep up with using French 1 to 2 times per week, once being with my friend and then once being with my tutor. I want to read more. I'd like to finish the book that I'm currently reading and then hopefully a second book as well. I have so many books that I want to read in French. I just need to actually sit down and do it. Hopefully though, with kind of trying to make sure that I'm relaxing during this stressful time of year, I will be doing a bit more reading. I also want to be watching things, whether it's movies or TV shows. And then sort of lesser priority goals, I'd like to read an article a week in French. Because I can read nonfiction in French at the same pace that I read in English, this is not as much of an undertaking as it is for German, where I have to actually pause to look up words and am a bit of a slower reader. But it would have me be exposed to a lot more French and get me reading a lot more. So I would like to do it. Is anyone surprised to learn that I did not accomplish a single one of my Italian goals last quarter? I once again neglected Italian. It just really has not been a priority. It's been so low on my kind of priorities list that it is just it's not even there. And I really don't want that to be the case. I do want to, at the very least, maintain my Italian level, if not continue to improve it. I do occasionally watch YouTube in Italian, and luckily I haven't noticed any sort of decrease in my comprehension level, but I think it's probably pretty safe to say that my output is probably quite horrendous. I haven't spoken or written in Italian in quite a while. I still don't have lofty goals for Italian. It's still not a priority for me right now. It's honestly okay that I haven't really done much in it this year. I didn't intend for it to be a priority at all. But I really do want it involved in my life ultimately, and I really right now want it involved in my life again. So hopefully just finding a TV show that I like, or watching more YouTube videos, or reading an article, or things like that can be things that will keep me in contact with the language, end up teaching me some new words, and maybe motivate me to study outside of that as well. Other than that, I don't think I'm going to end up taking any Italian lessons, but I would like to find a tutor, so that way when the year does roll over and when I am ready to start taking Italian lessons, I can just start doing that. I'm really excited to move into this last quarter. I'm really excited to start thinking about my goals for 2022. I would love to know how your quarter 3 went and what your goals are for quarter 4. This is our last chance to get all of our overall year-long goals done, so I hope that you are making good progress on all of them and are excited for the end of this year. And I'm excited to come back at the end of this quarter for the last goals wrap-up video of the year. Until then, I will see you next Wednesday, and remember, practice makes progress.